Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the American Sports Connection. My name is Mike. I'm your host. We're going to talk today about the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 matchups that just happened this past weekend. So let's get started. First off, we had Kansas versus Maryland. This was actually a very good back and forth game. In the first half was actually tied at the half. Kansas in the second half went on a 9-0 run to put this game away. Uh, their big stars, Perry Ellis had 27 in this game, and Wayne Selden had 19. They were just too deep for Maryland in this game. Moving on, we had Villanova versus Miami of Florida. This game actually surprised me because I thought it would be much closer than what it really ended up being. Villanova hit 10 threes in this game, and it was really never close. Their defense really put the clamps down on Miami. I had Villanova winning this game within like 5 or 10 points, but I didn't expect them to win by 20 or more. So that was the one thing that really surprised me with this game. Moving on, we had Oregon versus Duke. Dylan Brooks had a big game here. He had for Oregon. He had 22, 5 rebounds, and 6 assists. And Elgin Cook was another big guy for them, and he had 16 and 9 against Duke, and they actually outscored them. Excuse me, they scored 46 in the second half on Duke and really blew them out as the game went on. I was actually surprised Duke made it as far as they did, considering their team was not very talented as compared to years past with they have Kyle Singler and they had Plumlee, but and Ingram. Forgive me for not mentioning him. Those gentlemen, but other than that, they really weren't as deep as previous years. Because if I remember correctly, they were out of the top 25. Them and Kentucky at one point in the season. So kudos to them for actually getting as far as they did. Next matchup was Oklahoma versus Texas A&M. This game actually surprised me as well. I had Texas A&M in my Final Four and upsetting Oklahoma. However, they literally just blew the doors off of Texas A&M in this game. Jordan Woodard had 22, and Buddy Hield, even though he struggled, still had 17 and 10. They scored 45 in the first half of this game, and after that, it was never close. Thank you, Sander. These guys are just so deep, Oklahoma. They have 3 guys that are lights out shooters. Woodard being one of them, and Buddy Held being the other, who should probably be a top 5 pick in this draft. So they're just very, very difficult to defend. I thought A&M would give them a better game, but after they just scored 45 in the first half, it wasn't even close. There was no chance that A&M had of coming back. Next matchup, we had North Carolina versus Indiana. This matchup was interesting because it was close for a while. Marcus Page, if I'm saying it correctly, had 21 here, and North Carolina just literally blew them off the court in the second half. They scored a tourney high, 101 points. They are just so deep, North Carolina. It's literally like when they have their bench guys come in, it's just like bringing in one All-American after another All-American after another All-American. They are just loaded with top-tier talent. It's ridiculous. Next matchup was Notre Dame versus Wisconsin. Adam, if he was here, he would be brokenhearted about this one. Demetrius Jackson got a steal in this game for the go-ahead bucket with 14.6 seconds for Notre Dame to cap off a 42-point second half for them to pull away in this game and basically sneak one out. I really don't know how Notre Dame does this. They really just kind of hang around with teams, and they just find a way to pull it out of their ass in the final seconds of games. Because, believe it or not, Notre Dame was a team that actually beat North Carolina at one point this year. So they're a very weird Jekyll and Hyde type team. Like when they play well, they could beat anyone, but when they're not on their game, it's hit or miss. Moving on, next matchup was Virginia versus Iowa State. I really liked Virginia in this matchup because they really tend to put the clamps down on you defensively and make it very difficult for teams to score. If I remember correctly, they were averaging maybe less than 30 points a half, teams against them. They really play full court press and man to man and zone. They switch a lot of different things up, that works for them. And teams really have had trouble adjusting to them doing that. And Anthony Gill for Virginia had 23 points in this game to cap off a 45-point first half. And Virginia never looked back because they are just so difficult to score on at times that the Iowa State really didn't have a chance after they buried themselves in the first half. Next matchup, Gonzaga versus Syracuse. If Lance was here, he would be heartbroken because his Zags blew a golden opportunity here to make it to the Elite Eight. They were up, I believe, at one point, 10 or more in the last 8 minutes of this game, and Syracuse came roaring back to get one, sneak a win out here with Michael. I'm going to try and pronounce his name. Gabinge hitting the game winner with 22 seconds left, and Tyler Lydon sealed it when he got a block on a comebacker to try to tie the game and or possibly win it. It was just amazing to me because Gonzaga had played so well defensively late in games, especially with Sabonis, their big-time center, who will be a lottery pick in the upcoming NBA draft, which we'll talk about later down the line as that gets closer. And he was their one really big name star type player, but they just I don't know what happened. It was like they just cracked under the pressure here late in this game. It was very mind-boggling to me how that happened. All right, that does it for the Sweet 16 matchup. So we're going to move on to the Elite Eight matchups, which happened on Saturday and yesterday. The first one we have here was a big-time matchup of Kansas versus Villanova. This was a phenomenal game to watch if you didn't see it. It was back and forth the entire game. Villanova really took control of this game in the first half where Kansas committed 10 turnovers in the first half alone because both teams were shooting poorly due to great defenses on both sides. But due to the 10 turnovers in the first half, Villanova had built up a 7-point lead at the half. And also, the reason being was Perry Ellis was in foul trouble in this game, and if I remember correctly, only had 1 or 2 points at the half, which is shocking considering how he was considered one of the top big name players in the tournament this year to this point. After the first half, Kansas kind of woke up early in the second half and kind of punched Villanova in the mouth, where they took a 4-point lead, went on a 11-0 run, if I remember correctly, because they were down 7 at the half and came back to be up 4 with about 5 or 6 minutes into the second half. And credit to Villanova because they took their best punch and came right back and went on a 10-0 run themselves, heighted by Daniel Oshefu hitting a nice little jumper to get them going, and then back-to-back threes that were bombs by Ryan Arcidiacono and Tyler Hart, if I remember correctly, hit back-to-back threes to put them back up 5, I believe, or 6. And after that, Kansas never really got the lead again, if I remember correctly. They shut down Perry Ellis for the entire game. Great defensive job by Villanova. I think he had only 4 points the entire game. It was just really fun to watch a good, defensive battle where Jay Wright, the head coach of Villanova, was mixing it up with zone, man-to-man, half-court press, three-quarter press, full press, kind of like, making the moves as the game went on and adjusting to it. So that was really fun to see. Probably his best coaching job I've seen to date. Moving on, the next matchup was North Carolina versus Notre Dame. This was actually a really good game as well. Notre Dame really went shot for shot with North Carolina in the first half, and North Carolina started to pull away a little bit into the second half, about halfway. And the thing that Notre Dame tried to do was slow the game down. We're almost taking up the entire shot clock to kind of like muck up the game so that North Carolina couldn't run a track meet with them, basically, which you're not going to win with North Carolina, a track meet. So that actually had worked for them because North Carolina had an 11-point lead at one point in the second half, and Notre Dame came roaring back to take the lead by two or three with about 8 minutes or so left in this game. But North Carolina would not be denied. Bryce Johnson had 25 to help them pull ahead for good and eventually put them under and move on to the Final Four. As I stated before, they're so tough and so deep, North Carolina, where it's almost like Notre Dame had the right strategy where they tried to muck up a game and kind of slow it down, where they literally almost took every second of the shot clock before they figured out what they wanted to do to kind of hold them down so they're not putting up crazy high numbers. Like in the Sweet 16 round, North Carolina scored over 100 points. And it's hard to kind of match up with that if you're not a team that can run and gun and do a track meet type of game. So that's why Notre Dame tried to slow it down and make things interesting. And they did there for a little while with about 8 minutes left in the second half. But eventually, North Carolina's talent just took over and got them into the Final Four. Next matchup we have here is Virginia versus Syracuse. I watched this game, and I kid you not, I turned it off when Virginia was up 13 with 8:34 left in the game. I had to go run an errand. And I said, oh, well, this game's in the bag. Virginia's going to make it to the Final Four. I didn't see Syracuse coming back from that type of deficit with only 8.5 minutes left to go. Boy, was I wrong. I come home to see Syracuse go on a 25-4 run after they were down 13 to come back and shock Virginia. It was amazing to me because I just praised them in their Sweet 16 matchup of how great and suffocating their defense was through the first 3 games they had played. And it was almost like they just took the game off after the 8:34 mark and thought this was in the bag. And credit to Syracuse and their kids and Jim Boeheim for his coaching job to keep those kids fighting the last 8.5 minutes to pull off this major comeback in the Elite Eight. I know a lot of pundits, myself included, didn't believe Syracuse belonged in the tournament and that there were more deserving teams that should have been in that had better records overall, or maybe like the RPI, or key wins against the top 50 and the top 100, and those types of things. But credit to them, they got in and they went on a run, and they're making everybody eat crow that said they shouldn't have even been in the tourney. So a heck of a coaching job by Jim Boeheim just to get them where they are right now. Incredible. And the last Elite Eight matchup was Oregon versus Oklahoma. This was another shocking one to me because I really liked Oregon in this matchup. I thought they could kind of outrun Oklahoma in a kind of track meet style type game. Man, was I way off on that. Buddy Held had 37 points in this game. They literally just blew them off the court in the first half. They had an 18-point lead at halftime, and Oregon could never recover. I talked about Oklahoma's 3 guards that are really good shooters in that Sweet 16 matchup they had with Texas A&M, but I thought they would have a little more trouble with Oregon than they really did, and it was amazing to me how they beat them so badly. If they did win, I thought it would be kind of close, maybe 5 points or so, give or take. But Buddy Held just really willed them to win this game because he did not have a very good game in the matchup against Texas A&M. However, he really showed up big time in this game and he would not be denied going to the Final Four for the first time in his collegiate career. So it was fun to watch, all around. All right. So that leaves us with 4 teams left. We're going to go over the Final Four matchups that will be held. I believe both games are this Saturday. Yes, they are both this Saturday. The Nova Oklahoma game is the first game at hang on a second while I pull up the Google machine, and I can tell you the exact times for your areas when both games will be on. The Villanova Oklahoma game is the first game on April 2nd, which is Saturday, at 6:09 p.m. Eastern. They will be first. And then after that, North Carolina and Syracuse will be the final game at 8:49 p.m. Eastern. So I'm going to go and break these matchups down a little bit. The first one is Nova versus Oklahoma. I think this is going to be a fantastic game because Villanova was blown out by Oklahoma earlier in the season at a invitational game on a Navy carrier, I believe. The ones that they do for like CBS Sports or ESPN every year, those types of games. This was very, very early in the college season. I believe Villanova lost by 23 in this game. They were really got their ass kicked. And Oklahoma hit 14 threes in this game. And this was at the point early in the season where Villanova was not playing a complete game. They were coming out kind of flat early in games and not really putting together a full 40 minutes. And it dearly cost them in this game where they fell behind early, came back to tie it, and Oklahoma just stormed back to take the lead at the half, and then it never got close after that. So, but they are both completely different teams now from when they played each other almost 6 months ago. And you would honestly have to say, if you've watched Villanova as a Villanova fan or Oklahoma, if you're an Oklahoma fan, both of these teams are playing their best basketball at the right time. Villanova, before the close game with Kansas, had the biggest winning percentage points per game wise in the tournament. Through the first 3 rounds, I believe it was 24 points they were winning by on average, which is phenomenal. And their defense has been really suffocating. Even though they didn't blow Kansas away in their Elite Eight matchup, they really suffocated them and gave them a lot of trouble. There was one guy for Kansas. No, it was with the exception of one guy, made all of their 3-point shots in that game. There was only one other person that had one 3-pointer he made in the entire game. So credit to Villanova's defense for shutting down, a very potent Kansas team. Now they really have their work cut out for them with Oklahoma with their guard play, because they like to run and gun as well, like Kansas does out on the fast break and get easy buckets and those types of things. So they're going to have to get creative on how they're going to slow down Buddy Held and Jordan Woodard. They're going to have to really, really get creative on how to slow these guys down, because if you let them, get in fast breaks, if you're turning the ball over, that's another thing Villanova got very, very lucky with. They were very, very sloppy with the ball in their Elite Eight matchup with Kansas, and they cannot, if they want to win, they cannot do that against Oklahoma, because they are going to make them pay, I believe, with the way their run and gun style is. They're not going to be able to stop Buddy Held and those other guys in the open court, especially if they're getting open looks, because Kansas had a lot of open looks in that game, and they missed them. They bricked them. So they're going to have to tighten that up, where you cannot give Oklahoma's good shooters open looks all night because they're going to make you pay eventually. So I I honestly don't know who's going to win. If you held a gun to my head, I would pick Villanova just for the simple fact I'm in the South Jersey area, which is usually we support all Philly teams. So I always support a Philly team that's in the tournament, even though it sounds like I'm a homer, but I think it's possible Villanova could win. I mean, I think it's very possible Oklahoma could too. It all depends which team gets to dictate the pace of the game and how things fall, like turnovers and if you're hot shooting the ball or if you're cold. There's any number of different factors. What could happen there. The other Final Four matchup is North Carolina versus Syracuse. I would be shocked, and this isn't a disrespect to any Syracuse Orange fans out there, because they've already done it against Virginia, so it is possible. However, I would be shocked, really shocked, if they beat North Carolina, because North Carolina is just a very, very deep team. I don't know if the kids that they have there will be NBA worthy talent, but they are phenomenal how they work together as a unit on UNC squad, and they're pretty deep where they can have guys come off the bench and make big plays and be difference makers. So I believe North Carolina is going to beat Syracuse. I could be wrong. It'll be very interesting to see, just for the simple fact of if Syracuse, with the zone that they play, will they be able to really get North Carolina out of a rhythm, or are they going to play more man-to-man? Are they going to do like a full court press, half court press, 3/4 press, like really agitate them as they try to inbound the ball and not give them a free release up half court? Or are they going to kind of try to, have them make mistakes so that they're not comfortable? It should be very interesting to watch, because it's possible that Syracuse kind of gets them frustrated with the zone if North Carolina does not hit their shots. If they start missing and not getting offensive rebounds and easy putbacks, then things could get kind of interesting. But I feel it'll be North Carolina and Villanova in the final championship game matchup. However, I would not be surprised if Oklahoma beat Nova either, and we'd have Oklahoma and UNC either way. It would be a fantastic matchup for either team if they played North Carolina. I still believe, even though I love this Villanova squad, excuse me, because of where they've come from since the beginning of the season and how well they've played lately, even if they do advance to play North Carolina, if North Carolina beats Syracuse, I really just can't see anyone stopping North Carolina and them eventually becoming the national champion. I hope I'm wrong. I really do hope I'm wrong, because it'd be nice to see someone different for a change. Because this college basketball year has just been crazy. There's been no clear-cut team that you're going to say, well, at least earlier in the year, that you said that team is going to make a big run and they're going to win the national title when you look at them. There was no big Kentuckys or Dukes, of the world. I mean, Kansas had a good year, and they were the number one overall seed, but obviously they didn't make it. The other thing that was shocking to me, not to go off topic, but all four number one seeds made it to the Elite Eight round. However, only one of the four actually made it to the Final Four. I don't know if that's like a record or something that's never happened before, but I just thought that was very interesting where you could have potentially had all four number one seeds make it to the Final Four. I don't know if that's ever happened. All right, everyone. Thank you for listening. I'm going to get out of here. I will be back tomorrow with my Raw recap rundown on the Go Home show for WrestleMania, which is only 6 days away. Also, don't forget, I'm going to give a shameless plug here to a friend of mine, Dino Mitchell, who is a good friend of mine. Please check out his website at BritishWrestlingRadio.com. That's all one word, BritishWrestlingRadio.com. He is supposed to be doing a countdown to WrestleMania the next 6 days. They're going to have a show on, and it's going to be a WrestleMania rewind, so to speak, of different superstars and their matches they've had over the years. I believe tonight the first one is Kane, if I'm remembering correctly. And he'll talk about with Dean and his co-host Nixie Newman. They'll talk about Kane's matches through the history of WrestleMania, who he's feuded with, what matches you liked, what matches you didn't like, all those types of things. And I believe he's going to be doing this every night this week leading up to WrestleMania. I'm usually in there hanging out, and we usually hang out for Raw there, give our reactions to the show, a handful of us. And usually for pay-per-views like NXT TakeOver that's coming up, which I will do a post-show about as well, and WrestleMania, which I will cover as well next week. So if you want to come, hang out, listen to the show, have a good time, visit BritishWrestlingRadio.com, click on the live show tab, and you can come in, make a name for yourself in the chat, and talk about everything that's going to be going on, and your thoughts for WrestleMania and whatever else they're deciding to discuss that day. Also, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe button, and I will see every single one of you tomorrow for my Raw rundown and reaction. Hope everybody has a great day. Take care now.